So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
What's the matter with that cat there?
Must be full of reefer.
Full of reefers?
Yeah, man.
Mean that cat's high?
Sailing.
Sailing?
Lightly.
We now wander off the beaten path with an update from the Reefer Reporter.
Hello and welcome to the Reefer Reporters, featuring Canadian and international cannabis news here on lifestyleradio.net, and we are live. This week we're covering the news from March the 27th to April the 2nd, 2018. Hello, Kim. How are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm pretty tired. I'm jet-lagged, but I'm in great spirits.
Well, you shouldn't take the 420 jetliner for a joyride, you know?
I know. I've just been flying all over the place and crossing time zones, and now I'm all messed up.
Yeah, you were telling me that sounds like a big zigzag ride. Home, you're down into the U.S. For a wedding, right?
Yes, my beautiful daughter got married. Alicia got married to her fiance Matt this past week in beautiful Las Vegas. We took a detour on the way home and had a split flight. So we were in Detroit in Houston, Texas for a little while. So on the way home.
Well, it's bad enough taking off once. I can just imagine taking off 2 or 3 times. That'd be no fun.
Yeah, it
was. Being as the Reefer Reporters, why don't you give us a report on what cannabis legalization looks down there?
Cannabis legalization in the state of Nevada. The state of Nevada is legal for recreational use. However, the system is far from perfect. There are issues with consumption. There are no safe consumption spaces. There are no consumption lounges. It is frowned upon to smoke in public. They do not like the use of cannabis joints or raw cannabis flowers being used on the streets of Las Vegas, especially on the Strip. People have been known to be ticketed as much as $600 fine for consuming raw cannabis on the streets of Las Vegas. Given that there's no place to smoke it, I don't know what tourists are supposed to do. Some of the lower grade hotels will also evict tourists that are smoking in their hotel rooms. You can be removed and asked to leave the property if you're caught smoking cannabis in your room. So this, to me, is not legalization.
Wow, that sounds even more stricter than what we're being offered here by Kathleen Wynne in Ontario.
Yeah, they've got some bugs to work out down there. I mean, the dispensary scene, off the hook. They've got warehouse-sized dispensaries everywhere it's available. But the consumption, big issue, especially if you're a tourist. And I mean, that's what we're looking at in Ontario. I'm glad that we're revisiting this issue in Ontario because I got a chance this time with this trip to experience firsthand what it would be like without a place to consume cannabis as a tourist to a new place. And I'll tell you, it's a headache and it's a fear, especially with me being a patient. I was going to a legal state, so I was glad to be able to consume and use my prescribed medication on a regular basis while I was visiting the U.S. But then at the same time, if I was consuming raw flower, I was a nervous wreck thinking I was going to get a $600 fine.
I don't know what the fine is here in Ontario, but yeah, that's basically no public consumption whatsoever. And that sounds a lot like what's being forecasted here. So.
Yeah. I mean, we got around it. We went to the dispensaries. We purchased a whole whack of extracts. So we got some distillate, we got some, shatter and some waxes and some butter. And we took over our vapor pens, that we can reload. So the ones with the coils in them. And we just used those. So because there was no smell, we did basically consume everywhere we were.
Yeah.
Casinos, on the Strip, all of that. But no flour for sure.
Now, obviously, the storefronts, the dispensaries, with them being so big and everything, that's a big bonus over what we got going on here.
Absolutely. Lots of choice. That I will say. Tons and tons of choice. Very nice dispensaries. I was sad that I wasn't able to take any pictures. I wanted to take pictures to show everybody, what I was looking at. But every single one I went into, no photography was permitted at all. So I got a couple of shots of the outside of a few of them, but that was all I could do.
Well, maybe next time, if there's ever a next time you get down there, maybe things will change and hopefully things will improve.
Yeah, hopefully they definitely need to do something in the state and definitely in the city of Las Vegas, being the tourist attraction that it is. You definitely need to provide some safe consumption sites for people to consume what they're purchasing in these dispensaries.
It also sounds like when it comes to this legalization part, except for around the dispensary end of things, but for the recreational people, it sounds like a place we should send the Ontario politicians down there to learn what not to do.
Absolutely. Trying to find a place to consume this was really problematic, and it was a pain in the ass all the way around. Yeah. It really was.
Really was. Yeah, I can just imagine. Okay, well, let's get on with the regular news then.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Well, we're going to get started here with a bit of a lawyer's opinion on the cannabis bill and the way it was discussed in the Senate.
Yeah, some lawyers are chiming in, and they're saying, the bill is going to pass the way it is in the Senate, and they're not really happy with it. They say, yes, legalization, it has to happen. They're not disputing that at all. They're disputing a lot of the fines and the criminality that is still going to go along with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's keeping some of these laws intact and worsening some of them, I believe. An adult who possesses more than 30 grams of cannabis in the public's criminal. The use, if they got more than 5 grams, they're criminal. Passing a joint to a minor, an 18-year-old boyfriend guy passing a joint to a 17-year-old girlfriend, they're also breaking the law. And some of these punishments are just brutal.
Yeah, ridiculously high. 18-year-old person who passes a joint to their 17-year-old friend or who possesses more than 30 grams of cannabis for their personal use can face a 14-year jail sentence.
Is that for personal use or distribution?
Or for distribution. Well, they say anything more than 30 grams, you can't claim personal use. 30 grams or less is personal use. Anything over that is automatic distribution.
So somebody who's got 3 different strains of cannabis, maybe got 12 grams, 13 grams in each bag. Their scale's not accurate, let's say, for an example. They could be facing 14 years in jail.
That's right, because they've gone over by 6 grams. If there's 12 grams in each bag and there's 3 bags, well, you've got 6 grams too much. So you must be looking to sell that. They'll automatically be charged with distribution.
And so you're looking at, probably about a little more than $100,000 probably to house somebody in jail per year. So what about $1.4 million for 6 grams?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like we were talking about the safe consumption spaces here on Ontario, this on a federal level needs to be revisited. Definitely going to be problematic going forward for a lot of people. Once again, this is not legalization. Yeah,
exactly. It's not. I'm just trying to see some points in here. They say that there's lots of things in here that violate the charter, and this is obviously going to end up before the courts.
Yeah, well, they say the whole ticketing regime is also constitutionally flawed because it discriminates against the poor. If the pot ticket is paid within 30 days, the resulting judicial record of the ticket will be sealed and cannot be disclosed to anybody. But if you don't have money to pay that ticket in the 30 days, then it becomes a permanent part of your record.
Yeah, and you know who gets that?
That's right. Anybody that doesn't have money will be subject to these records. Yeah.
And, there's one other thing here that they make note of is that there's a point there where they say a youth can be, a criminal where an adult possessing the same amount would not be, which isn't normal.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely backwards. The youth of today are protected. under the Young Offenders Act and everything else. When you turn 18, your previous record is basically expunged and sealed. In this case, we don't know if that's going to be so.
Yeah, we don't. Well, we'll find out as, maybe, what is it, June? Another couple months, April.
Yeah, a few more weeks. We're down to weeks. We're counting off the weeks at this point. So we'll see how it works out in the end. I'm sure it's going to be disputed in the courts and revisited a great deal.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, as they say here, 14 years for passing, for having my example there of 39 grams is, really it's cruel and unusual harsh punishment.
Absolutely.
That alone would defeat it, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're 14 years for basically 6 grams.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at. And if that's supposed to be fixing the current system that we have now in any way, then they've gotten this terribly wrong.
Yes, exactly. Well, I suggest everybody check out Canadian Lawyer mag.com, an article by Michael Spratt. Bill's sober second thought, he says.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Now we're off to.
We're staying right here in good old Ontario. Being that Ottawa's Ontario, that's where the federal government is. Now we're dealing here with the cannabis medical patients and excise taxes. An article in the Mississauga.com website that says that patients vow fight on medical cannabis tax.
Yeah, people are getting together, and doctors are actually standing up and taking a stand in this alongside patients as well. The excise tax is going to hurt patients. Patients are in low income brackets. If you're a patient and you're using cannabinoid medical therapy for pain or anything along those lines, a debilitating condition, chances are you are not employed, which means you have a limited means, and cannabis is not covered by any drug benefit program that the government or employers are currently supplying. So this is a costly medicine for anybody that chooses to go a natural route and away from the pharmaceutical measures. Then you're already at your wit's end and strained to fill your prescription. Adding a new cost onto that, such as the excise tax, is just not feasible for patients.
Oh, big time. It's $1 per gram or a tenth of, the weight of it. And this is just adds excise tax. Like, why do you put excise tax on a medical product? It doesn't make sense to me. And they say that they're putting it on there in order to prevent abuse of the medical cannabis system.
Really pisses
why don't
me
they put
off.
Why don't they put excise tax on prescription drugs? Because there's plenty of them that get abused.
It really pisses me off that people that are doing the right thing have to pay the price for people that are possibly might abuse the system. Don't take it out on the patients. Go after the people that you think are abusing the system. If we're going to use this kind of logic in our House of Commons and in our Senate, then why don't we use the same logic for our senators and our House of Commons? There is proven abuse of the system when it comes to the deductions and the allowable expenses that senators and our council members are allowed to claim on their taxes every year. They just get a thing where they just write it off. Well, there's been recently a commission that was launched to look at all of these claims and expenses that our senators are putting forth in their business accounts and everything else. So, okay, if we're going to use that logic, why don't they have to pay for all of their business expenses out of pocket and then claim it later and be reimbursed? It's the same thing. They should be able to have to submit their receipts for their expenses if that's what we have to do. And it would be the same logic. It would stop the abuse of the system. So if they want to use that logic, they should start right in the House.
Well, good luck there. Well, I'm going to say basically it looks like from reading this, like 99.9% of the cannabis end of stuff is going to be taxed, because they said that in the February budget they plan to waive the new tax on some cannabis-based pharmaceutical products, including oils that contain low amounts of THC. And that's it. Nothing to do whatsoever with the dry herb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the Canadians for Fair Access to Medical Marijuana, an advocacy group, they did talk to various MPs and different department officials, and they left there believing that they had been heard. Well, unless the government says by relieving the tax on cannabis-based pharmaceutical products is the message that they got. Obviously, they didn't get the right. They didn't hear it right.
Message.
They didn't hear it right.
They heard what they wanted to hear, and they turned it into something that it wasn't, to try and appease and say, well, we did listen and this is what we heard. But I mean, it's all crap. Cannabis is the only medicine that has a regular tax put on it. To put this excise tax on it is just a hardship, another hardship to patients, and another reason where I think they're going to eventually eliminate the medical regime and say, you know what, you can get your meds at the corner store so you don't need a script anymore. And I think it's just one more brick in that wall that they're building.
Well, you're not alone on that. Others have said the same thing, Kim.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a sad situation. Sad situation.
Okay, well, we're staying right here in Ontario, but we're coming up next door to you, Kim.
Yes, we are. We're coming up to the north and going to visit my little town that I'm currently residing in, Timmins, Ontario. Timmins holds a festival every year called Stars and Thunder. It's a very large event. It takes place over 7 days where we have a large fireworks spectacular display every single night throughout the 7 days, and different live entertainment with some fairly large names in the music industry appear in Timmins for the course of Stars and Thunder. Well, this year, sponsors are approaching Stars and Thunder for sponsorship spots at this big event, and we have one that's a cannabis industry company has climbed on board for Stars and Thunder. Up Cannabis Inc. has signed on as a sponsor for this year's Timmins Stars and Thunder event.
So it appears that the Stars and Thunder people are, let's say, going back to the Cannabis Act and saying that these people are not allowed to be sponsoring, so they should not be involved in this?
Yeah, there's been 2 council members that were outspoken and said, no, we don't want this. It's a family event. We don't think this is proper. Isn't there rules about this happening? And they're not allowed to do sponsorships. Town council took a vote. They listened to everybody's opinion. There was basically 2 main dissenters in opinion, and that was Pat Bramford and Joe Campbell voted against. Other council members that were in favor were Veronica Farrell and Andrew Marks, who both reiterated that, while we have beer, Molson Beer Company is part of our sponsorship. So if you're going to say that it can only be geared to children-friendly venue, then does that mean we're going to eliminate Molson's as a sponsor as well? Well, I guess town council didn't take kindly to that and said, well, no, of course not. We're not eliminating Molson. And she said, well, then you can't eliminate Up, can you? Because it's the same thing now that it's federally mandated. Andrew Marks spoke up and said he had no issue with it and actually supports it and thinks it will be a good gate for learning material for those in the general public that want to learn about how much cannabis is helping medical patients across the board. And since this is a medical cannabis patient company, he has no issues with it supporting them.
No, it seems that, he's supporting this. And I see the other councillor who was against this, their concern is the children.
Yes, of course, it's always the children, isn't it? But the Molson advertising is fine for the children, of course. Yeah,
whereas Mr. Marks there, who is pro on this thing, he's promoting the fact that this helps people, in pain, helps people with Alzheimer's, helps with digestive issues, helps with the children.
Yeah, that's right. And he, as I said, he sees it as a learning opportunity for the community to find out more about the medicinal benefits of this plant.
Yeah.
It's encouraging. It's encouraging.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Somebody that's in an office that's is supportive is always good to have. That's for sure.
Yeah. So yes, it did pass, and it's gone on to final reading. As long as it passes the sponsorship board now, then we're good to go. We'll be having Up Cannabis sponsoring the Timmins Stars and Thunder.
Well, let us know what happens.
I will be. I'll be updating everybody as it evolves.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, it's time to fire up the jet.
Sounds good.
Okay, and we're going to take the 420 jetliner down to Georgia.
Down to Georgia, where they're studying marijuana and the brain. Legalization could help offset the opioid epidemic, a new study has found.
That's right. CNN has got that posted, and the experts has they did two different basic studies. They did one. I'm just showing. I knew I'd blow this.
Studies were published in the Journal of American Medical Association Internal Medicine, compared opioid prescription patterns in states enacted laws with those who have not enacted laws. So one of the studies looked at opioid prescriptions covered by Medicare Part D in 2010 and in 2015, and the other one looked at opioid prescriptions covered between 2011 and 2016.
And they, because Medicare, they cover 42 million Americans that are including those 65. So obviously, there's a lot of people that are, that are covered by there, and it's good to see that that they have looked into all this.
Yeah, and they're saying there is a drastic reduction in the opioid use in states that have legalization. 73 million low-income individuals in the U.S., according to the website, use prescriptions, Medicare, that covers Americans down there, the Medicare program.
Well, according to the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, 90 Americans a day die from opioid overdoses, resulting in more than 42,000 deaths per year. Wow. It's just, it overtook vehicle accidents and shooting deaths as the most common cause of accidental deaths.
Yeah. They saw a 9 to 10% reduction in opioid prescriptions in Colorado and Oregon since legalization has come into effect.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, actually, they split some of the study between people that have the states that are legalized and the medical use, and they show the differences, how much was saved. Like how much the government saved by patients, using the cannabis when it comes to the opiates, funding and everything like that. They saw 9 to 10% reduction in opiate prescriptions in Colorado and Oregon. Yeah. And the first state in the United States to legalize cannabis for medical use was California. Since then, other states have, and they have all found that they are going down.
Yeah. Places that opened dispensaries and dispensaries became available in states, they saw a 14.5% reduction in opiate use when the dispensaries were turned on, and a significant 7% reduction in opiate use when home cultivation was turned on.
Yeah, which is great. Even more going down. The impact of these laws have obviously, made differences. States with medical cannabis laws saw almost 21% morphine prescription and a 17% fewer hydrocodone prescriptions compared to the states that do not have laws.
Yeah, fentanyl prescriptions were also under Part D, were dropped by 8.5% that enacted medical cannabis laws.
And it's stats like this that makes you wonder, why isn't government looking into this more closely? Like, what else are they seeing out there that is making a difference? Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. A 2014 study showed states with medical cannabis laws had a 24.8% fewer opioid overdoses deaths between 1999 and 2010. Now, we knew this in 2014. Now this new study has come out and reinforced those numbers. The government and healthcare professionals must stop and look.
Yeah. Well, New York State Director for the Drug Policy Alliance says that there's a growing body of scientific literature suggesting that legal access to cannabis can reduce the use of opiates as well as opiate-related overdose deaths. You know?
Yeah, it's amazing. The stats go on and on and on.
Yeah, some skeptics, though, argue that the cannabis legalization could actually worsen the opioid epidemic.
But are these skeptics going on anything other than propaganda? Because the statistics tell us differently. If you pay attention to the actual science on the new studies such as this one that are coming out, it proves these skeptics are not doing nothing more than spouting propaganda.
Yeah, and allowing more people to possibly lead to addiction or yet overdose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once again, the fallacies continue.
Well, hey, let's hopefully numbers like these, push the governments to have no alternative but to actually do the actual research, or say, hey, and there's other there's advocates that are out there on the street that are doing this, like Neil Magnuson.
Yep, that's right. We've got boots on the ground that are showing results with this therapy, and it's helping people, and that's the bottom line.
Yes, it is. That's for sure. Okay, Kim. Well, what do you think? Maybe we should fire up this jetliner to fly across the big pond, and while we're doing that, you and I, we can take a bit of a break.
Sounds good. Let's have a drink on the 420 airline.
Drink. It better be water. Okay, Kim. After the break, you're going to have a can of history moment, and this week it's on.
This week it's on who was the very first state to enact any kind of cannabis legalization.
Oh, well, I have an idea, but who knows? Things change. Okay, let's see. As we go off to the break, you're going to hear a Fox News report with Dr. Alvarez, and as we return, John Prime and his audience have a message about an illegal smile. You're listening to the Reefer Reporters live here on LifestyleRadio.net.
Hey, this is Cheech.
And this is Chong.
And you're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
What is it?
Lifestyle Radio. Say it one more time.
420 radio?
Ooh.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
U.S. Attorney Jeff Sessions announced he would be rolling back a policy that cleared the way for legal marijuana.
But a new op-ed says that move puts our country in reverse, saying, quote, Sessions is taking us backwards. Why not begin regulating and taxing a rapidly growing industry that could fund important government projects while helping to make it use safer by keeping it off the streets? With us right now is the author of that op-ed, Fox News Medical A-Team's Dr. Manny Alvarez. Dr. Alvarez, surprised by this.
I know.
Legalize it. Just legalize it.
Look, from a medical perspective, I've been monitoring this for a long time. My position has changed over the years for a lot of reasons. Number one, the genie's out of the bottle. You cannot have multiple states around the country legalizing marijuana, 28 states making medical marijuana legal, and all of a sudden say, by the way, we want to continue this status quo. There's an amendment that's going to come up now for renewal, January 19th, which has been in the books now for a couple of years now, which does not allow the federal government to use dollars to prosecute legal states' use of marijuana once they have adopted it. So what I'm saying now from a medical perspective, I'm very interested in taking marijuana off the Category 1, making it equal to heroin as a drug. It isn't. Every single medical society in the world says it isn't. The AMA just had a meeting in December and says, look, take it off as a Category 1 drug because it isn't. Okay. And that would allow at least medical research to continue so that we can see if whatever parts of the plants work for medical use, we can then study them further.
I'm with you on the medical use, but I have talked to drug counselors because opioids, as you know, are devastating families, devastating communities. I've talked to drug counselors and I've talked to law enforcement, and they say pot is a gateway drug to these other drugs. And that's from drug counselors, too, who've said to make it illegal if you want to stop the opioids.
I think that there's a lot of hearsay. I think there's anecdotal reports that point to that direction. Listen, I'm not saying that drugs are good in general. I'm not saying that. But when you have 88,000 people die from alcohol-related illnesses in 2017 and you have 0 death from marijuana, you have to wonder, are we talking about the same apples and oranges? Look at cigarettes, for instance, right? All these things are quite dangerous in many, many ways. It had to take the federal government to get involved in alcohol regulation, right? I can't sell my moonshine out of my basement in Cresskill because you don't know the quality of it. So there's regulations that the federal government had to get involved with serious substances like alcohol and cigarettes.
To summarize, you said, look, it's here. So be practical about it. Regulate it is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. You got to get involved. Don't bury your head in the sand. Get involved. See what you want to do. Take it off the category 1, and let's move on and see if we can do something.
I think it makes kids lazy, and I think I'm really troubled by the government normalizing it. That's just my opinion as a mom doctor.
Well, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
All right,
Thank
Dr. Manny, train some ways by writing that pro-marijuana story.
Are you looking for cannabis news, education, and people's opinions? Are you looking to learn what Canadian and international cannabis advocates are doing, not only now, but what got them to this point in their lives, and what does the future hold for them? Do you want to learn how patients are using cannabis as their daily medication, or learn how their cannabis use helps them with their medical condition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I'm going to suggest to you to tune in to Lifestyle Radio. Catch their live weekly shows and have your questions and concerns answered and find the experience you're looking for. Monday, catch your weekly news broadcast with the Reefer Reporters. Then on Wednesday, get several hours worth of cannabis public education. We get things started with cannabis and coffee with marijuana. Then tune in and catch Pottawa with Russell Barth, who calls himself the world's angriest pothead. Finish up your evening with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with Al Graham and joint host Kim Cooper and Alicia Yashishin. No week would be complete without tuning into Friday night's program, the 420 Radio Show, featuring Al Rapp and the 420 Radio crew, Mary Jane Baker and Marcel Gignac. Cannabis is a lifestyle, and you can catch all your cannabis lifestyle information right here at lifestyleradio.net or at our sister site, 420radio.ca.
Not too perfect, we want to sound like a regular crowd. I have the key to escape reality, and you may see me tonight with an illegal smile. You don't cost very much, but it lasts a long while. Won't you please tell the man I didn't kill anyone? I'll just try.
We are back from a break and a quick medication session, of course, and a quick 420 flight on the airline over here to Africa. Hey, Kim, what do you think?
The great nation of Africa. The very big nation.
Kim.
What?
Your history moment.
Oh, my history moment. Oh, goodness. Okay, well, before we disembark this plane onto Africa, we're going to talk a little bit about history. And it was in way back, and it was not California. For those of you out there that are shouting out California as the answer to my history moment, it's
like me?
Not California. Like you. You're wrong.
I got my hand up like me.
Nope. It wasn't. It was New Mexico. And it was back in February 1978. New Mexico was the very first state to pass legislation that recognized the medicinal value of cannabis. Representative David Salmon was the main sponsor of the 1978 Controlled Substances Therapeutic Research Act, or the Lynn Pearson Act, which allowed the medicinal use of marijuana. The act was to legalize the use of the drug to relieve pain and suffering from debilitated illness and injury. The House Judiciary voted on it 9-1 and recommended the passage of the bill. 1978, New Mexico.
Wow. I thought they had just voted recently on some medical marijuana type stuff.
Yes, Ben, that was the follow-up, and that was in 2007. New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson signed into law to create a medical marijuana program in New Mexico. That was to establish medical marijuana for medical purposes, and it was basically a revamp, kind of like what we did with the MMAR into the ACMPR.
Okay. All right. I was going to say, boy, it didn't take them 34 years to implement this, did it?
No.
Well, you got to sort of think we've been waiting several years for, implementation of cannabis legalization due to, reports and Senate reports and so on and so forth. So, yeah, we know what it's like to wait a long time.
Yes, we do. But so New Mexico has been at it for a while.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I was right on the California bandwagon.
Yeah, most people are.
I'm sure I wasn't alone. Okay, let's get off this jetliner and check out Africa. I bet you it doesn't look anything like what we see in TV or National Geographic.
No, it's completely different. It is a city. It is a thriving community, big city, much like other big cities around. And the whole country itself is just, it's massive. Lots of plants and everything anywhere, and now they're cultivating cannabis that is being shipped for export to where else? Canada.
Like what?
Yeah.
That's the first time. What?
Yeah, Canada is importing cannabis from Africa.
It may already be here.
It may be. It was shipped out on the 26th of March, and it was supposed to arrive in a couple of days, so it may already have landed on the shores out in BC.
So you got a African cannabis that is coming to Canada through a U.S. company.
Yes, Seattle-based Rezo Sciences is a U.S. company that is cultivating in Africa and has now made deals to import their product into Canadian industry.
Yeah, they say that it looks like it's going to be used for research and development after it receives a certificate of analysis from a lab.
Yeah. 850-gram shipment was confirmed.
So about 2 pounds, a little bit less than 2 pounds?
A little under 2 pounds. Vancouver company said it will perform analytic testing on the MMJ on behalf of an unnamed client.
Unnamed.
Yeah, unnamed client. So somebody's using African cannabis to conduct, some sort of testing on Canadian soil.
Yeah, well, we'll get into more of that later in a different news story about some testing and changing things around. So, yeah, that's interesting. Eh? You see more countries talking about exporting cannabis.
Yeah. I mean, exporting, it seems that it's being shipped all over the place. Cargo containers all over the place filled with cannabis destined for different parts of the world.
Yeah, well, this location has drawn some interest from international companies hoping to, break some ground there, help meet the demand in the African markets and overseas.
Yeah, they say they have buyers lined up in Canada. Of course, they all want certificate of analysis from a certified lab before they can really even talk about going further into business.
I see here Supreme Cannabis has announced plans to invest $10 million in Metagrow.
Yeah, so it looks like it's going to expand and carry on, and we're exporting from Canada. We're importing from other countries. Many of the LPs are jumping on board and moving this product all over the globe.
Well, here we're surprised about hearing this coming out of this section of Africa, but I see here they also have medical cannabis laws in other places like Guam, South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Swaziland.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that. I didn't know it was that popular there in Africa.
Yeah, and Africa seems to be on the move with many of their smaller countries there jumping on board with different programs and stuff. I mean, it would be a great economic boom for these places. I mean, let's face it, the climate there is wonderful. for growing. You could produce a massive amount of product in a short period of time. So it could be a brand new industry for these smaller countries.
You never know. Exactly. It help a lot of them, improve themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Financially. Yeah.
A new money market, a new industry.
Improve things for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So much success. I wish them much success in the future, for sure.
All righty. Okay, Kim. It's time to get aboard the jetliner again.
Yes, it is.
We're heading back over to Colorado now.
Yeah, down into the States. I'm back in the States again.
And this story here in Cannabis Now at cannabisnow.com. It's something that we're seeing here in Canada. I know I have been approached by a place of employment, and that's basically the cannabis industry needs to, deal with workplace safety issues.
Yeah, it seems to be something that nobody is really paying attention to. And I think that's because largely the cannabis industry so far in our history has been underground. Well, we don't have workers' comp in underground businesses. No. It just doesn't exist. If you got hurt, go outside and fall down on the sidewalk again and pretend it happened outside, because nothing happened in here and you're not getting compensated for it. And that's the way it's been. Ideally, really, that's the way it is. Now that our industry is out of the shadows and we're getting, business permits and licensing and all of that, it's something that really needs to be looked at, because the majority of workers and workplace owners aren't trained in these things.
Well, do they train people? I can't remember. When I was working, I was part of training. I was one of the leaders, would train them on certain things where I worked. I can't remember us ever training people about alcohol consumption or anything along that line, or, taking their prescription drugs while at work.
Yeah.
I can understand why, to a point.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a different situation with cannabis because of the way our culture is. We generally, if we work in a vapor lounge, you can consume while you're at work. Most people do that work at vapor lounges and that kind of thing. Smoking on the job is permitted, So if we're going to be bringing this into legitimate businesses and out of the shadows and the dark back alleys and that kind of thing, then we have to look at workplace safety issues, and maybe being stoned at work isn't a good idea.
Well, they did some research, and they say that employees do not consider their on-the-job consumption a threat to others' safety. They said that they found that 63% of the people employed by the cannabis industry have shown up for work high in the past month.
Yeah, 63%. And that goes to what I said. It's part of our culture. So we do go to work stoned. We consume at work.
Well, we're just medicated.
We're medicated. But as far as the statutes go, and to put it into terms on paper, medicated means stoned, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to put it under workplace, that you're intoxicated, you're feeling better than your normal self, you're euphoric to some extent, well, that means you're stoned, right? We're used to it and everything, and we can function normally.
Normal every day. That's right.
Yeah, we can function normally like that. But this again, how do you gauge that? We're in the same area as we are with the driving, right?
Yeah. Well,
how do we gauge, and where do you draw the line to say, okay, well, now if something was to happen on the job, an accident, somebody falls down. Now, if you weren't stoned, would you have still fallen down? Probably, and no matter what, though, in the end, they'll say, you they're
consumed.
Say it's because you were stoned. And therein lies the problem. And it's the same thing with driving. If we're behind the wheel and we've consumed our meds and somebody hits me, I'm in a car accident now, but they hit me. If I wasn't stoned, would that accident still have happened? Yes, probably. But I was stoned when it happened. Herein is the problem. How do we deal with this?
Well, they said they should look, by the looks of it, look at an example for the brewing industry, because they say back in the day it was common practice for brewers to allow employees to consume beer during breaks and at lunch.
Yeah.
But on-site consumption was stopped decades ago after it was led to a barrage of accidents, both on the job and on the street, at least with at least one death. 1994, Coors Brewing shut down its beer break program because a worker smashed a vehicle into a utility pole right on the company's property.
Yeah.
I don't see that being...
I don't see it being an issue. I don't see that, like, we shouldn't be comparing cannabis and alcohol, because I think they're both intoxicants, but they're on two completely different levels as far as intoxicants go. And they shouldn't be used. It's apples and oranges. You can't compare them. Not at all. And especially as far as patients go and tolerance and this and that. Newbie, somebody that just used it for the first time, yeah, okay, there can be some similarities, but anybody that's a regular consumer, no, absolutely not. That's where it all stops. But I see the struggle for places like Workplace Safety Board, insurance companies, these kind of things. I see the struggle for that, because how do you define the rules?
Like you say,
where do you draw the line?
People at vapor lounges and stuff, the ones who consume cannabis, employees consume. But does somebody consume who's, say, a trimmer at a licensed producer? Are they getting, toke breaks?
I don't know. But once it becomes legal, there's nothing stopping anybody from going for a toke break instead of a smoke break, right?
Well, it might come down to the company's policy, though.
Yeah.
But just to update you on that fellow who hit the utility pole, he was pronounced dead at the scene, and it was revealed later that he had 3 times the legal limit of alcohol in his system, and that's without even leaving work.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So,
right.
It's going to be a struggle in the future for sure. It's questions that have to be looked at, and plans have to. It's an evolving situation. We're all learning as we go.
Well, maybe down the road you'll be able to find out with one of our guests. One of our future guests might be able to, on the Pace Radio Show, might be able to answer that question. Do med patients medicate, at work?
Yeah, I think I will put that on my list of questions to ask that particular guest.
All righty. Okay, let's leave there and let's head her back to Canada.
Sounds good. Back to Canada.
Yeah, and we're going to head to Barrie.
Northern Ontario, slightly north.
Slightly north of Toronto.
Slightly north of Toronto.
CBC News article. They're asking why some ganja classes are using cannabis in their practice.
I love this story by the CBC. As you pointed out to me earlier, the CBC is kind of slow in getting caught up in this. You were featured in an article several years ago on this same situation, weren't you not?
Yes, I was. Yeah, in the local papers. So, but it stood. But even it is years later. It's good to see that it's new to these people.
It's new to these people. It's new to these people in Barrie. They've started a yoga center where they consume cannabis just before they start their yoga session, and they take a break in the middle and they consume some more. They say, why do they do it? And they say, well, I can do it sober. Well, why should I? This is so much better.
Yeah. It's so much. As they say, it's so much nicer this way.
Yeah,
they say cannabis class is a lot like regular yoga. It's just the fact that these ones got volcanoes or vaporizers nearby, and instead of instructors saying, "Hey, everybody go get a glass of water," they say, "Hey, go get a glass of water or a bit of a toke."
Yeah. Marijuana can help you not think about it. It makes it go away. A little easier to look at the void and just be okay with it all, one of the patrons said, Mr. Curtis Hagerman that attends the sessions. He said, and concentrating with your breath and kind of losing yourself in that, it also helps Hagerman with his flow movement, critical to yoga.
Yeah, well, Erin Jewell, she says it's a connection of the mind and the body, which is hard to achieve in Western society at all. But especially if you are completely stone sober, it's not likely to happen. It helps to allow your thoughts to move a little slower and to really allow you to truly focus on your body and your breathing.
Yeah. Miss Wanamaker is the one that runs it, and she says, normalization is what we're trying to do here. Cannabis starts as a sprout. Coffee starts as a sprout. Like all plants, it's just a plant.
Yeah. There's obviously people who find a benefit to this. One fellow there, he's been doing yoga since he had a back injury, and now he can go medicate, and go do yoga at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing, the way that cannabis has become mixed in with so many things. I mean, I've seen, painting classes with cannabis, compared to, the old sip and paint. They used to go for wine and paint a picture. Well, now you can consume cannabis and paint a picture. Do yoga and consume cannabis. All of these, the evolution of different events that we take place in our daily lives, and now incorporating cannabis into them.
Yeah, exactly. And they say that this looks like this is held at a lounge in the city. People do not, they can't purchase cannabis or anything there. Just be basically like a vapor lounge where people bring their own cannabis in order to do this. And they say that they follow all health, police, bylaw, fire, and police department regulations, just like any other business. And they have a valid Ontario business and restaurant license.
Yep.
Yeah, it says cannabis starts as a sprout. Coffee starts as a sprout, and like all plants, it's just a plant.
Yeah. Wanamaker leads the classes from the front of the lounge. She said her intention is instructing the class to do yoga as a community that might not have necessarily thought that it could be part of their lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, not everybody agrees with this, though.
No, there is always the naysayers.
Yeah, the Canadian Yoga License Alliance, which has 2,000 members, is for registered teachers. They don't like the added buzz to this. They say, personally, blazing in a yoga class, no, I don't agree with it, and that yoga itself is the high.
Yeah, she thinks that cannabis yoga will likely become more of a trend and thinks it will fade away. She says it's just ridiculous. These types of classes have also been held in Toronto and Montreal.
Yeah. Oh, look at this. Cannabis yoga it's not the longest part of the long list. They say that there's been beer yoga, snow yoga, alpaca yoga, and goat yoga. I haven't got a clue.
I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know what goat yoga is, I don't think. I think I'll just stick with the cannabis yoga. As far as it being a phase, as we said at the start of this one, not so much of a phase, considering the fact that the one and only here, Mr. Al Graham, was part of an evolving story about cannabis and yoga several years ago. So this is something that's been ongoing.
Yes, it has been going on and going, but it's good to see more people discovering it and giving people that option. It's all about education, sharing the information.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if they started one of these in Timmins, I could see myself checking it out.
Yes. Okay, well, let's move on again, and we're going to go back across the big pond. We missed a story while we're over there. And it's an important story.
It is. Back to the roots of it all, really. We're going into the Netherlands. We're going to talk a little bit about the Dutch.
Yes. There's, people look at the coffee shops over there and they're saying, it's all legal over there. You can go in a coffee shop and buy 5 grams or a couple grams and, you don't get in trouble. It's, people look at it as legalization. What some people don't realize, though, is that it's not legal to produce cannabis. It's sort of the situation we had here in Canada when Terry Parker won his court case, where he was allowed access to cannabis, and over there they're turning the blind eye to it all, but there's still laws against producing it, and there's no supply, and that was the problem with Terry Parker's case.
Yeah. Over there in Amsterdam and everything, where all of this is going down for so long, coffee shops exist, but they're kind of in a gray zone. They're technically illegal. Police can ticket, shut them down. They just kind of turn a blind eye. They say, it's part of the lifestyle. It doesn't hurt anybody. It's at the bottom of our list of priorities. We really just don't care. So they let them be. But technically, they were not legal and never have been.
Well, there's 573 of them.
Yeah. They just proliferated and grew, and I mean, they're everywhere. But technically, on the books, they are not legal. But the Dutch just let them be. They don't cause any issues. They don't really care.
Well, in October of 2017, the Dutch government declared its intention to permit an experiment on the legal supply of cannabis to these coffee shops to be carried out in 10 medium to large size municipalities.
Yeah. So they're basically taking a handful of shops and they're saying, okay, we're going to give you all your stuff and we're going to track it and everything. And we want to see what the supply and demand is here.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. They want to look at laws, designation of growers, the municipalities. And it's going to be a 4-year period of production. So they're looking at producing the cannabis. Yeah. So, are they basically, are they looking at doing something similar to our licensed producer program here? That's almost what it's looking like to me.
Yeah, I think they're playing with the idea of having a government-controlled substance supply all of the shops. They're taking a handful of them to see how it'll work and if people will gravitate towards that supply or if they'll continue to use the other ones where they've got perhaps more choice and stuff like that and gauge the public reaction to the new regime, so to speak. And if it flies, then I can see them turning this into an LP situation in Amsterdam and throughout the Netherlands.
Well, hopefully they do micro producers and all that stuff, because there's obviously some very good growers that are supplying these 573 coffee shops, and they shouldn't be left out in the end towards legalization. Yeah,
absolutely. I know the Dutch have been cracking down. There was issues with the cup that they had over there last year. With consumption and that kind of thing. There was a lot of issues at the cup, and so the Dutch are looking at changing things in the cannabis industry over there.
Yeah. Talking about changing things within the cannabis industry and banking.
Yeah.
As we know, over here in Canada, and this is an article here based in Canada, by CTV News, the many businesses, including licensed producers and even the first ever licensed producer, have problems dealing with our normal everyday top 5 banks when it comes to needing business loans in order to get things up and rolling. And if people were connected to the U.S., they didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, some of these LPs even had their accounts closed. They were asked to take their money and their business elsewhere. Legal producers, not just, dispensaries and vapor lounges and gray market areas.
Hydroponic businesses.
Hydroponic businesses. If you had any kind of connection to cannabis or the cannabis industry, banks were asking you to take your business elsewhere. They don't want anything to do with it. People are buying huge safes to put their money in because there's nowhere to put their money. Yeah. I mean, it's gotten just ridiculous, the whole banking situation for legal producers as well as gray market areas. So perhaps we're going to see some change on this front, but they're very cautious in letting people know they don't want you to have any affiliation with a U.S. business.
Well, as we learned recently, the Bank of Montreal was involved in a $175 million dollar deal financing canopy growth in a purchase. And it appears now that the Toronto Dominion Bank is also looking at being involved as well.
Yeah. They're saying, well, we're looking at it. It has potential to be a good client, but every cannabis client that they do look at will be assessed on their merits and should not have any presence in the U.S. market whatsoever, where marijuana remains illegal federally.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Are they going to restrict it to, these multi-$100 million deals, or are they going to allow it, like the local guy, friends of ours, candidates, for example, allow them to go into the bank just to get a business loan.
Yeah, or even do the transactions with the machines.
Yeah,
I mean,
as simple as that.
That has been hugely difficult for retail outlets, doing online transactions or debit machine transactions and that kind of thing, credit card receipts. I mean, it's almost impossible to get.
Yes, it is. Yeah. People have to find ways around it, and it's become a big mess. So hopefully the big banks get involved and start allowing cannabis business. Once legalization gets in, it's they're turning away money, right?
That's right.
Everybody pays interest on a loan. So
these small stores and everything are the backbone of Canada in the cannabis industry and beyond. You've got to help small business be able to function, and if you don't, then it's detrimental to the entire community.
That's right. Well, Kim, on to the next story. See, we're getting a little long in the tooth here.
Yeah.
On to the next one. Just like in an earlier story, we were talking about Canada and Africa. We're teaming up. We see here now there's some more teaming going on with an Israeli company.
Yeah, St. John's, BC, and an Israeli company are teaming up to do some genetics. They want to focus on growing new cannabis strains specifically tailored for specific medical and commercial uses.
Correct. What they want to do is they want to, find out what different cannabinoids are in different strains and try to match strains by their cannabinoid profile in order to try to make those profiles even stronger.
Yeah. So a certain strain that works really good for you, it contains, CBD1 receptors in there. That's the thing that it's got. Well, they want to breed something that's got high CBD1 receptor activations in it. And then that one will be geared to whatever illness that you're fighting. So, I mean, encouraging news, but at the same time, troubling. Is this part of Monsanto?
Well, yeah, frankenweed here is sort of what, I had concerns there as well. I could see if they're going to go through all this to develop these specific strains and everything, that I can see, coverage patents of some sort, some legal thing over them in order to be able to, keep control of it and only be available, certain ways.
Yeah, well, if they are able to do this and then patent certain strains and certain, profiles that they have going on, then that can open the door to pharmaceutical medicines being able to run a patent and a DIN and open the door for that. So it can be taken two ways. It all depends on the direction that the company chooses to take.
Yeah, I can see a benefit of it, but I can also see people having concern as well.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll be having to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Okay, and talking about keeping an eye on things, we should have checked into Oregon when we were down in Colorado, but it looks like they are checking in with the dispensaries by turning around and sending minors as decoys into these places.
Yeah, they want to make sure that the dispensaries are being compliant with the rules on carding minors and making sure that no sales are happening to minors. Apparently, they did a blitz back in December, and several of them failed that blitz. So they've done it again after levying some fines and increasing the rates of those fines and the amounts of those fines. They've done a new blitz, and lo and behold, they got 100% compliance. Not one single minor slipped through.
That's right. They had 5 minor decoy operations conducted since January 24th. All 43 dispensaries passed the checks.
Yeah, great to see the people that are doing their jobs there and carding minors and making sure that no minors are sold and everybody's playing by the rules and not giving these dispensaries a black eye. Fabulous job by all of the employees for sure for doing the due diligence.
And just in case anybody thinks there's any trickery involved in this, they actually send the minors in with their own actual ID, right? So it's not fake ID involved. They use their actual ID. And there's also an inspector there with them.
Yep, that's right.
Watching it, so the inspector sees it.
Yep, they're being watched the entire time. It's being watched and they're being recorded. Independent company that does it, they just go in and they send somebody in that is underage with their proper ID and say, hey, I want to buy pot. And they find out if they're going to be permitted to do so. And thank God, none would allow it.
Yeah, well, they thought that, some people thought that by increasing the penalties, that it wouldn't make a difference, but obviously it did.
Well, yeah, it did. No business wants to pay increased fines to the government for non-compliance. It's better and easier just to comply with the rules. None of us want to have, the stain on our hands of serving to a minor and then something happening to that minor. So I'm sure the few times that it did happen in the past, they were mistakes. Those mistakes have been corrected, and they're obviously doing a good job now.
Well, some employees did lose their jobs. And, yeah. I don't know whether they knowingly sold to a minor, but...
Yeah. But the errors were corrected, proper measures were taken, and all is well once again.
That's right. All is well. Okay, Kim. Well, that's our report for this week. We've run out of stories.
We've run out of time, and we've run out of stories. We could go on, but there's just no time.
That's right. Okay, everybody, that's our Reefer Report from March the 27th to April the 2nd, 2018. And in closing, we'd like to say thank you for listening to our Cannabis News broadcast. And if you enjoyed it, please share it with your friends. And don't forget, you can usually catch us, not always, as today. You can usually catch us on Monday around 4:20. And also, remember to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
I'll catch you later.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.